Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. So I have another recipe on a budget meal for you. This is sage Parmesan crusted pork chops with veggies pesto. So the first thing you're going to need are some pork chops. Pork chops are really cheap, especially if you buy the thin cut ones, and the thin cut ones are the best for this recipe. You're also going to need some Parmesan cheese, some sage, salt and pepper, and an egg, and that is for the pork chops. Put this over here. And then for the vegetables, I got these from my mother-in-law's garden, but cherry tomatoes are so good in this recipe. Also some squash. I have yellow crooked neck squash and a zucchini. And then some asparagus. You don't need the asparagus if you don't have any, but it was on sale, so I picked some up. And then I'm using this pesto from Aldi. It just makes this so good. So yeah, these are all the ingredients you're going to need for the recipe, and I'm just going to chop them all up and prepare them and then show you how to cook this dish. Alright, so all I've done so far is washed all the vegetables and I cut the ends off the asparagus. Now I'm just going to cut the asparagus into more bite-sized pieces to throw into the dish. That's perfect. I like lots of vegetables because then tomorrow if we have like chicken for dinner, we can just use the same vegetables and it just makes it a lot faster. Chop up some zucchini or some squash. Squash is just a very low-cost vegetable, especially in the summer, but you can use any vegetables you want. It is going to have a pesto sauce, so keep that in mind. Another thing that you can do that's pretty cheap is potatoes. Potatoes would be really good in here, but potatoes take a little bit longer to cook, so if you're in a rush, what I like to do is I like to microwave the baked potato. So you just wash it and then stab it with a fork a couple of times and microwave it for like 3 minutes or so, just till it gets a little bit soft. And then when you cut it up and saute it in the pan, it cooks so much faster and then it gets like crispy on the outside. So that's what's really good. So that's something that I like to do when we're having potatoes, but we have so much vegetables that I want to use up. I don't really need the potatoes, but the potatoes are a really good cheap filler and they taste really good with a pesto. So I have all this squash. I got that at Aldi. If you didn't see my Aldi video, I just uploaded that. Then this zucchini was super cheap too, like literally less than $1, and it's so big. Just chop it all up. The seasoning for this is just going to be salt and pepper. You can add more seasoning if you like, but I think they just taste so good on their own. So I'm going to put these in the skillet. I'm just going to put some avocado oil. I have it right here. I get this from Costco. And avocado oil is really good because if you're going to saute something on a high heat, you're going to want to use the avocado oil because it has a high smoke point. Or you can use coconut oil, but I think the avocado oil has a much better flavor. So I'm just going to salt and pepper these right here. And then I'm going to heat up that skillet. And I'm going to add the veggies to the skillet and just let them saute. When they're almost done, I'm going to add this pesto, probably like 2 good tablespoons full. And I'm going to half all these tomatoes and I'll add those at the end and I'll show you when I do that. Alright, now I'm going to prepare these pork chops. Like I said, I like using the thin cut pork chops. These were actually thick and I cut them in half. I just got them on sale. But they're a lot cheaper when you use the thin cut ones because, I don't know, they're just a lot cheaper of a meat. Or what you can do is I like getting them at Costco and buying like the whole pork loin. And then you can cut them into sizes that you want, as thick as you want them. But for this, I like the thinner cut ones because they cook faster. Which is good because you don't want the outside to burn by the time the inside is cooked through. So I use a thermometer to tell how long this needs to be cooked. It needs to be cooked to 145 degrees. So I'm just putting some sage and some salt on top of these pork chops. Next, I'm going to crack an egg into a bowl. This is going to help the coating stick to the pork chop. Alright, so this also has 2 tablespoons of water in with the egg, so I'm just going to mix this up and it's just going to help the Parmesan cheese stick to the pork chop when we're cooking them. There we go. And then on a plate, I'm going to put some Parmesan cheese right here. We're going to need a lot because I have a lot of pork chops. And then I'm also going to crack some black pepper into here. So I have my station all set up before I start touching the pork chops again. All right, so I'm going to pick a hand to touch the pork because you don't want pork all over your kitchen. But I just dip it in the egg, dip it in the Parmesan cheese. Just need a little thin coat and then put it onto a plate to sit. Okay, so you're going to do that with all of them. Super easy. Just make sure you get your station set up before you start dipping so you don't have to touch everything. You don't need to cover the sides. That's plenty of cheese on there. Some people use breadcrumbs, but I try to avoid like bread products and wheat and stuff. So this is a low carb, gluten-free version of this, and it's just as good. So when we cook these, we're going to use a skillet. And I like using avocado oil again. You want to make sure that the oil is hot before you add the pork chops to it, because otherwise the pork chops are going to stick to the bottom of the pan and that Parmesan cheese is going to come off. So you don't want that. So you want to make sure that your oil is hot before you add the pork chops to the skillet. Also, you're going to want to make sure they're not touching in the pan because you want that Parmesan cheese to stay on and not fall off. So they're just coated like that, a little bit on both sides. I make extra just because my husband takes leftovers to work. I take leftovers to work. If you wanted to make these ahead of time, you can. You can make them just like that and then put them like that in the fridge and then cook them up later for dinner. You can prep all the veggies ahead of time before you put them into the skillet. So then when it's time to make dinner, all you need to do is just throw everything into the skillet. You're going to want one skillet for the vegetables and one skillet for the pork chops. All right, so all my pork chops are right here. I'm going to get my oil cooking and then I'm going to add these to the skillet. All right, my oil's hot. I'm going to add my veggies in. Lots of veggies. And I'm just going to let those saute, and once they're almost done, after like 15 minutes or so, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of this pesto and mix that in. Over here I have my oil in the skillet. I have a good amount of oil. It's like a thin layer across the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to add my pork chops in. Remember, you want the oil hot when you add your pork chops. So it should sizzle right when you put it in. It's going to be cooked on medium-high heat. Are you peeking?
I'm peeking at the meat.
These need to be cooked about 5 minutes on each side. If you have a meat thermometer, again, it should be 145 degrees. Over. All right, so after about 5 minutes, I'll flip them. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to flip them all over now. If you lose some of that Parmesan cheese to the bottom of the pan, it's fine. There's going to be plenty left. And cook them about 5 more minutes on this side. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes, so I'm going to get 2 tablespoons of this pesto sauce. You can use any kind of pesto you'd like. You can make your own. This is just super convenient. Actually I'm going to put 3 tablespoons in this just because I have so much vegetables in here. So 3 tablespoons of this sauce. You can also just use some fresh basil if you'd like. But the flavor of this sauce from Aldi is just so good. I know they have a pesto sauce from Costco. And I haven't tried that just because I love this one so much. But I heard that that one's pretty good too. And the sauce on these vegetables is just seriously amazing. You're not even going to need much seasoning besides that. Like, I'm not going to season anything else. I think I'm going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese to this at the end, so that'll give it a little more saltiness. There's that pesto, and then I'm going to add my tomatoes. So these are from my mother-in-law's garden. The only reason I'm making this recipe with these vegetables is because of these tomatoes. I planned this whole recipe around these tomatoes. I'm just going to cook them for like 5 minutes with the tomatoes and the pesto in it. And then sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top to finish, and these are going to be done. And again, we'll have them with the pork chops. If we make chicken tomorrow, we'll just have the leftover veggies with chicken. We'll have the leftover veggies alongside a sandwich for lunch. I like making a big pan of veggies and just having it with different meals. It just makes it super easy. I'm always thinking ahead on how to save time later. But this is what it looks like. Ooh, pretty good. Alright, this is the final product. This is the pork chop. The crust stays pretty good on most of them. Again, you just want to make sure that oil is pretty hot and let them cook for a good 5 minutes before you flip them. And cook them again for 5 more minutes. The vegetables took 10 minutes before I added the pesto and the cherry tomatoes, and then it took 5 more minutes. So this dinner, once it was prepped, it only took 15 minutes to cook. So definitely this is a good weeknight dinner on a busy day. If you have all the veggies and pork chops prepped ahead of time, it only takes 15 minutes. If you have to do all of it, it takes about 25 to 30 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Oh yeah, the kids like the pork chops, but they don't like cooked veggies, so they're just going to have baby carrots and tomatoes on the side that are raw with the pork chops. So that's what the kids are going to be eating. And we have these fancy Dixie plates. So if you like these videos, make sure you give them a thumbs up, and I'll bring you some more recipe videos. Thanks guys, bye.